and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA and Beyond. I'm Andy Hum.
It's true. We do go beyond. I'm Ann Northrup.
And we're going to start with some international news because the Cuban people, let me repeat that, the Cuban people legalized same-sex marriage in a referendum.
Well, they did have the support of the government, but we'll discuss that. Senator Schumer, back here in the United States, is explaining his delay on voting on the Respect for Marriage Act in the U.S. Senate.
We're fighting back. An animated ad counters Republican attacks on families with trans kids. We'll show it to you.
And another pro basketball player has been fined $40,000 for using an anti-gay slur.
We're going to remember pioneering lesbian activist Pat Norman of San Francisco. She went way back.
And she was everywhere. Catholic bishops in Belgium are blessing gay partners.
Monkeypox cases are plummeting, at least in New York City, so keep up the good work. It's not over.
Elton John's farewell tour played the White House. I have mixed political feelings about that.
And Madame Tussauds unveils Lil Nas X.
And he's very cute. He's very cute with his wax likeness.
So what you've been reading about Cuba in the news this week is they got hit by a hurricane. But right before that, they voted in a referendum to legalize same-sex marriage. About 2/3 approved of reforms to the family code. And it's not just that. It includes surrogate pregnancies, giving same-sex couples the right to adopt children, equalizing relationships more between men and women. This is the biggest breakthrough ever for the LGBTQ movement in Cuba, which we've been talking about for years, but finally something happened.
But don't you think that's why the hurricane hit Cuba?
No, well, then why is it hitting Florida? Because they passed the Don't Say Gay law?
No, because we're fighting back against that.
Anyway, Cuba, Fidel Castro came to power in 1959, and he sent gay men and lesbians to work camps to be re-educated.
Well, now in Cuba, it's always a debate because there are the government gays and there are the anti-government gays, and so the government gays are being given some what am I trying to say? Credit for this law being proposed repeatedly because they tried to do it last year or the year before, sometime around then, but they had so much opposition from the right wingers that they withdrew it, but they persisted and included it in this version of the proposed new family code. And the people passed it. So Mariela Castro gets credit for hanging in with this, and the current government gets credit because they supported it and asked people to pass it. But activists are still saying that there's still too much suppression of dissent in Cuba, too much suppression of them as anti-government activists, and too much poverty and need in the country. So
are you saying that this is pink washing?
I am saying that the anti-government LGBTQ activists are making charges like that. They're not against it passing. They're just saying, let's not get carried away here. There are still a lot of problems. And certainly the suppression of dissent continues, and that's a big deal.
And before we leave Latinx America, Mexico is making further progress. Durango became the 27th state to enact marriage equality on September 18th. Just 4 states to go in Mexico. They do take their time.
Well, so did we. We did it state by state for quite a while before the Supreme Court did it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So just trying to keep us honest on that. All right. So then we come back to this country and whoa, what's that Kirsten Sinema doing now?
Well, first of all, she's one of the negotiators around this Respect for Marriage Act, which we're going to talk about. But the reason we have her picture up there is that she is speaking at the Mitch McConnell Center against lifting the filibuster in the Senate, making nothing. This is what she has to say before the midterms. It's just terrible. She said, as the founding fathers intended, we have to keep the filibuster. I mean, that's ridiculous. They did not intend any such thing. And she said she shared the values of Mitch McConnell. We don't agree on everything, but we share values. Ugh.
Well, it's so hypocritical. They stand there supporting the filibuster. Mitch McConnell applauding her supporting the filibuster. And
she is the most effective first-term senator in my lifetime, he said.
Well,
should tell you everything you know.
Who rammed through 3 Republican right-wing Supreme Court justices because the filibuster was eliminated for that job?
And she wants to bring it back for that.
Well, it's a little late.
Then we'd all get along and be more moderate.
It's a little late, and it's a little hypocritical for Mitch McConnell to be applauding her for saying that, although, of course, that might ensure that he can retain those positions on the Supreme Court. I don't know. But it was not a pretty sight. She talks a good game, but the reality is that everything she's doing is standing in the way of progress.
The Equality Act and everything else.
Yes.
Of abortion rights. So we told you about the delay on the Respect for Marriage Act. This would repeal DOMA. It was passed in the House with 47 Republican votes. Senator Schumer, the majority leader, says forcing the vote would have been the easy thing, putting Republicans on the spot as he has with other issues. Many in the caucus urged that going into the midterms. But he gave way to the chief negotiators, who are Democrat Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and Republican Susan Collins of Maine. Baldwin is saying, if forced to vote prior to the midterms, we might not have the same number of supporters as we will after. It was always about getting something done, not about losing. One anonymous GOP senator said he would never cross Tammy Baldwin and that she deserves the lion's share of the credit for the delay. Okay, it's on her. Well,
they're making a choice. They're saying that we choose to take a shot at getting this passed. There is no guarantee they will pass it after the midterms. The Republicans have no incentive to vote for this, especially after the midterms when they can no longer be held liable for their votes. To think that they are going to suddenly pass it after the midterms is a long shot at best and is very much a Lucy holding the football kind of dynamic. And what is more important, passing a law that enshrines something that does currently exist, or putting the Republicans on the record before the midterm? And
Schumer promised to put people on the record on the Equality Act, and he did not. He promised to do that.
And if you think that putting people on the record has some effect and could help us defeat some Republicans and put more Democrats in the Senate, then we would have a larger chance of passing the Respect for Marriage bill after the new Congress takes its seats, and the Equality Act, too. So are we shooting ourselves in the foot? Very possible.
Look, we're only doing this because Clarence Thomas said, my gun is out for the marriage decisions. And we finally reached a stage this week where the majority of Americans want to expand the Supreme Court because they don't like what's coming out of there.
I would never have predicted that. You were the one who has been saying it for a long time. I mean, not the only one, but on this show, you were the one who has been quite firm about the need for it.
Can't do it. I mean, of course, the big decision that the most existential decision the court is facing is this, what do they call it? The independent state legislature business, where the state legislatures get to determine federal elections. Courts can't have any say about it in the state. 50 chief justices of the states are saying, don't cut us out, Supreme Court. If you interpret the Constitution this way, we're going down.
Very scary. And it feels like a decision that could go either way.
Well, why are you so afraid of Donald Trump winning re-election? Didn't he say this week, we have to keep our country gay?
No, he was just stumbling over his word.
That's what came out.
No.
I'm surprised that the people from QAnon didn't just jump his bones after that.
Oh, come on. This isn't a story. Why are we even discussing this?
All right. Well, then let's go to the White House, where...
which is also a little dicey.
Okay. So there he is, Elton John, 75, on his farewell tour, played the White House lawn. 2,000 guests, including civil rights activist Ruby Bridges, education activist Malala, the mother of Ryan White, Jean White Ginder, and former First Lady Laura Bush. And Elton said he was humbled and flabbergasted. And then President Biden presented him with the National Humanities Medal for his music and advocacy, fundraising, and the global fight against AIDS.
So everybody made a big deal of the fact that Elton had refused to play Trump's inauguration. And so this was seen as a great slap in the face to Trump. Well, first of all, when Elton refused to play the inauguration, he also at the same time said to Trump, I'd be happy to come to the White House and play a concert there. And he had already played for Trump at his wedding to Marla Maples.
Didn't he do Rush Limbaugh's wedding too?
Yes, he did. So all this, kudos to Elton for insulting Trump is ridiculous.
Look, I mean, I think he tries to play with everybody. I couldn't do it. I don't want to do it. I mean, he praised Laura Bush for George Bush's PEPFAR program, which did expand global AIDS funding.
Yes, because they refused to join the Global Initiative World AIDS Funding Fund. They wanted to have their own U.S. only fund, and so they could then take all the credit for that.
But, Anne, all this is going to be fixed by the Republican platform for the midterms. It was unveiled. It prohibits teaching subjects that make kids feel uncomfortable, defending fairness by ensuring that only women can compete in women's sports, repeal the Affordable Care Act, defends quack cures. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's not specific about much, but it's certainly
repeals Medicare and Social Security every 5 years.
I mean,
you know that here's my favorite shocking story today. A school district in Pennsylvania has added to its list of banned books, Girls Who Code. Girls Who Code is banned in this school district in Pennsylvania. Why? Because it gives girls ideas that they might have, useful.
They might get out of the kitchen.
They also have a lot of girls of color in the book, depicted in the book.
You can't have that, no. So it's hard for me to understand why Democrats only have a 32% chance of holding on to the House, a much higher chance of holding on to the Senate, a majority chance.
Two words, immigration and crime.
Yeah, well, okay, we'll see. Abortion and Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid.
Please.
Right. President Biden, in the UN General Assembly speech, spoke up for the LGBTQ community, saying individuals should be able to live and love freely without being targeted with violence. Secretary Blinken spoke at the meeting of the LGBTI core group, a group of UN countries pledged to support LGBTQ people and intersex rights.
Okay, and what are they doing to get the Equality Act passed?
Right, and getting Brittany Griner out. President Biden nominated also Roger, how we say the name? Nihus?
Nihus or Nice, our
Nice.
director pronounced it.
Anyway,
Nice.
he's an out LGBTQ guy and a member of the Chinook Nation. As U.S. ambassador to several Caribbean nations, Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Antigua, goes on and on. He is a business person and a civic leader from Seattle.
Congratulations to him. All right. And next, well, I want to update everybody on the Yeshiva University situation and discuss that with you. A couple of things. First of all, the LGBTQ students at Yeshiva who have been told they can't have a club, and the Supreme Court said, yes, they can for the moment. And Yeshiva University then said, all right, we're shutting down all student clubs so that we don't have to let them operate. Well, they have stepped up, and the gay club, and said, hey, don't punish everybody else just because you hate us. We will step aside and wait for our complaint to be litigated, but let the other clubs operate while that's happening. That's a pretty big sacrifice on their part. Because usually we like to force institutions to operate on our behalf.
I'd like to see more solidarity from all the other groups saying, no, we're with you.
Yeah, and we're not going to operate as long as you're not allowed to. That would be nice. But meanwhile, a trans teacher at a New York City yeshiva, who is a graduate of Yeshiva University, has been fired because she is trans. She's a social studies teacher at this yeshiva. When the parents found out that she was there at the school teaching, they freaked out, and the school said, okay, you're out of here.
This is a college. The parents freaked out. Who cares?
No, this is a yeshiva, not Yeshiva University. She is a graduate of Yeshiva University, but this is an individual yeshiva school.
I see. All right. Well, people are fighting back, and let's talk about that. In Kansas, Governor Laura Kelly, a Democrat, is up for re-election. She was attacked by the Republican Governors Association for vetoing bans on trans girls in school sports. And in an ad, Kelly said, of course men should not play girls' sports. Okay, we all agree there.
Good for her. Well, a court in Montana, district court in Bozeman, said that 3 anti-trans laws passed by the legislature were unconstitutional and had to be gotten rid of. And one was about trans girls competing in collegiate sports. The court said the law unconstitutionally overrode the State Board of Regents. And there were a couple of others, one about students' rights to speak out on political issues. The legislature tried to forbid that, and the court said, no way, this is going too far. So we are winning some of these questions.
And there's this group called Wide Angle Research that came up with a 30-second ad for digital use to answer Republican attacks on families with trans children using animation, which apparently gets past the bias that many people have in political ads when you have actors, expressing views and things. So let's run that ad.
Every parent wants a happy, healthy child, but Republican leaders are passing government mandates to arrest and prosecute parents for child abuse simply for supporting a child who is transgender. Imagine being told the state has the right to come into your home and remove your children because Republican leaders don't like the way you're raising them. It's happening now. Republican rule. We can still stop it.
Pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, if we want to talk about scary, Pennsylvania has a Don't Say Gay bill now that's worse than Florida's and would become law if this Republican Doug Mastriano, who doesn't seem to have much of a chance, becomes governor over Josh Shapiro. It would ban any instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity through the 5th grade, not just the 3rd grade, a la Florida. And the sponsors want to ban discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in all grades. We need to go all the way, State Representative Stephanie Borowicz said. Shapiro leads by 10 points in the polls, but Election Day is not until November 8th.
They have us scheduled to live in a very strange and narrow country, and it doesn't feel good. Well, another instance of fighting back in Ohio, a teacher, Dawn Riggs, testified against a state board of ed anti-trans resolution that's been proposed. The board is going to vote in October, but she went to a hearing and testified against the resolution, and she's quite compelling to listen to.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Dawn Riggs. I'm from Logan, Ohio, and I am an educator in my 33rd year of teaching. I'm here to oppose the harmful resolution presented by Member Shea. I am certified in theater and in science, so my experience on this issue is multifaceted. As a teacher, I have had the privilege of working with many LGBTQ plus students in my career. Specific to transgender youth, I have many trans and non-binary students in my classes. My experience with transgender individuals spans my entire career. I am still in touch with some of those folks. Every single former student has told me how much knowing they had a safe place to be their authentic selves has meant to them. They have shared stories about traumas they were experiencing outside my classroom, from classmates, other teachers, family members. They have told me about their cutting. They have told me about their suicidal thoughts, their depression and anxiety and wish to disappear. The fact that they could walk into my classroom, be called the name they chose, and be called by the pronouns that reflected their lived experience made a difference. Even if no other adult in their life affirmed their identity, they knew they would be safe for at least a little while each day. 33 years of teaching, how many students is that? I will never know how many transgender students have felt safe and protected in my classroom, but I am proud to say that they were. It is no burden to use a name that we are asked to use. It is no burden to use the pronouns that are shared with us. If your friend William asks you to call him Billy, you don't blink an eye. If your friend Elizabeth says, I go by Lily, you call her Lily and we just say okay. The only difference between these examples and those opposed by this harmful resolution is the perception that a student's gender does not fit your expectation of it. The damage done by that policy is unthinkable, and I will not discriminate against my students. And this Board of Education must not either. The language in this proposal that teachers must out their transgender students when they are all not ready to be out is horrifying. Our students must be able to choose the time and the manner in which they share their transness and with whom. It is not our place to force them to do so. I urge you to oppose this hateful and misguided rhetoric. Thank you.
Wow. She's terrific.
She is.
Fight back. Stop apologizing. Fight back. I love it.
It doesn't surprise me that she's a drama teacher.
Okay.
But that was great. Oh, and on the in the cleverness category, the University of Massachusetts football team has, for some reason, has to schedule a game with Liberty University this year. So when did they schedule it? Pride Day at the University of Massachusetts. So Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's creation, is going to show up in Amherst, Massachusetts, to a sky full of rainbow flags and stickers and music and people and everything else. It'll be very interesting to see how they react.
And as we've been telling you, these QAnon people and Proud Boys and all these people, anything drag in the world, they are going to now and protesting with guns. And it's really, talk about scary. In Katy, K-A-T-Y, Texas, 100 neo-Nazis, Proud Boys, white supremacists, Christian fundamentalists, they went to drag bingo, a fundraiser at a church. What the hell? And so 100 counter-protesters, anti-fascists, wearing all black, they clashed. I didn't read about injuries. Both sides had guns. It's very scary.
It is very scary. And this has become the Proud Boys' MO. They search for these events and show up very violently and in large numbers, and it's just terrifying.
And, you know, in Prince George's County schools in Maryland, this trans teacher, Jennifer Eller, 45 years old. Now, she's been fighting with the school system for so long, but she finally settled a lawsuit over harassment and discrimination. She left the system in 2017, been going through 4 years of litigation, and she reached a settlement. So the schools are going to improve their policies, procedures, and training to protect trans students and staff. She began reporting the harassment in 2011 when she came out to her principal and began living more openly as a woman. And they basically told her, no, you can't. You got to wear pants. Don't wear skirts. Students were calling her a pedophile, she alleged. And in a minute, she twice transferred to other schools, one where she was the faculty sponsor of the JSU and the National Honor Society, but she was targeted for her gender identity. One student threatened to rape her, and the administration did nothing. Now she's pursuing a divinity degree.
The Board of Education in Prince George's County reached this settlement, agreed to this settlement after the court, in the midst of this civil suit between them and her, told the board that they had no chance of winning their case, that their behavior was egregious, and it was only at that point that they agreed to this settlement.
Okay.
Lambda Legal was representing Jennifer, and congratulations to all of them.
And we've told you about Texas, where they're trying to send out social service people to investigate trans families with trans kids. We learned that one of the first people assigned to it was Morgan Davis, 52, who transitioned himself just 9 months before this. 2 months later, he finally resigned after going on one of these investigations and finding the family to be fine and everything. But he said, I couldn't go on with it. 15 employees have resigned rather than do this. Now, right now, they're supposed to be under a court order not to do it, but that doesn't stop Texas.
No, they're under their third court order to stop doing it because after the first two, they kept doing it. So Greg Abbott and the Republicans, claiming their fealty to the legal system, have just ignored the law, ignored court orders, and are doing exactly what they want. They are treason. They're all treasonous.
And when Governor DeSantis isn't, trying to stop a hurricane, he's drumming up anti-LGBTQ hate. And the Pride Center of North Florida was vandalized over the weekend in Gainesville. Windows smashed, threatening note left. It is being investigated as a hate crime.
Well, let's take a break from the violence for a minute and talk about a real pioneer and leader who we lost recently, Pat Norman.
Absolutely.
82 years old, mostly of San Francisco, although she was in an assisted living facility in Las Vegas when she died after suffering some years of dementia and other illnesses. But she was an incredible pioneer. First of all, in San Francisco, she was one of these people who had a lot of city jobs, was appointed to a lot of commissions and councils and important positions. But her real work was on the side as an activist. She worked against apartheid. She formed a group that worked for lesbian mothers.
That was back in 1971 with Del Martin.
She was a co-chair of the 1987 March on Washington for LGBTQ rights and a co-chair of the Stonewall 25 operations in celebrations in 1994.
So famous that when they did the TV series on the gay movement, mostly out of San Francisco, When We Rise, she was portrayed by Whoopi Goldberg.
She was featured on GLAAD billboards against discrimination in San Francisco, and she was a Jesse Jackson delegate in 1988. She just seemed, to the Democratic Convention, she just seemed to be everywhere, involved in everything, and she was such a strong, forceful personality.
Strong. She raised 6 children with her former partner, Karen Langsley, with whom she was with partners for 14 years. And she's survived by 5 of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
A real elder of the movement, and someone who you just started smiling every time you saw because she was so powerful. And
she was tough, too. That's what we needed.
She was definitely tough and terrific, really an important human being. And as I mentioned briefly last week, I'm moderating a panel discussion online for the new LGBTQ plus Museum of History. on October 11th. And we will certainly, it's going to be about the marches on Washington, mainly the 87 march, but also putting that in the context of the 79 and 93 marches. And Pat Norman will certainly be celebrated at that event. It's 5:00 Eastern on October 11th.
Send me the link and I will put it in our weekly email. And you can sign up. You can sign up for our email at gayusatv.org on our homepage. That's also a place where you can support us if you were so willing. A great story out of Virginia. The congressional delegation, the whole delegation, met with Governor Youngkin, and they were he was confronted by Democrat Abigail Spanberger over his anti-trans proposal for education, which is just horrible. Now, Representative Bob Good, the Republican, said grooming was driving trans kids to suicide, not bullying. So Spanberger shot back, that's effing not true. I mean, she's a moderate. She's a Democrat. Well,
isn't she also a military veteran or a CIA veteran?
And then Tim Kaine, the senator, tried to calm things down by quoting the Bible. And
that's why he didn't get elected.
But then Youngkin, get this. He's, again, trying to be the moderate face of Republicans, but not really. He appeared at a press conference with Marjorie Taylor Greene supporting her bill, making it a felony to provide gender-affirming care to minors.
Youngkin is not a moderate. Say that 20 times. Youngkin is not a moderate.
I've told you about, how he's trying to appoint my former classmate at UVA, Bert Ellis, anti-gay, racist, to the Board of Visitors. And what I didn't realize is that hasn't really completely happened yet. The legislature has to approve that in January. So the student council at UVA came out this week and are calling on the state legislators to stop. We have a picture of Bert there. I think you think you have it there somewhere. And they're calling him out over his anti-gay. There he is. Oh, he was scary then too. Over race and gay issues. They're mentioning both of them. Contact your legislators in Virginia. Stop Bert Ellis.
You look so much younger than Bert.
He's scary. All right.
All right. Well, speaking of scary, what happened to the weatherman on a TV station in New York is pretty scary. Eric Adame has been a weatherman pretty prominently on New York One here for some years. He's an out gay guy. And you remember during COVID, the federal government and health authorities were suggesting that people go online for sex rather than getting together because that was more dangerous, any kind of skin to skin or human contact. Well, Eric took this advice pretty literally, and he was on a website called Large Penis Support Group. And he had some naked pictures. Well, no law against that. But someone noticed these pictures and they took screenshots and sent them not only to his employer, but to his mother.
Well, so he's suing the website to find out who did this. And he's also looking for another gig reporting the weather and is getting some offers. But he also said, I'm guilty of compulsive behavior. On the other hand, I'm not apologizing for being sex positive. It's, why don't you just,
Exactly. He's not standing up and yelling how wonderful he is. He's acknowledging there may have been some problems with this, but really, he did nothing illegal. He didn't hurt anybody, and for his employer to fire him seems egregious. Yes. He wasn't a teacher.
New York One. I mean, they have had many openly gay reporters of it. Not many, but a number. Andrew Kurtzman and others. But anyway, well, in terms
disappointing.
Well, we're going to follow up on our co-host Chris Cooper. The woman who falsely accused him of menacing her in Central Park while he was birding was fired from her job at Franklin Templeton for racism. Amy Cooper, no relation to him, though we are all brothers and sisters, lost a lawsuit this week alleging her employer engaged in race and sex discrimination against her. She is white. Amy was indicted for her misdeeds, but got community service or re-education or something. Chris didn't even testify against her.
Well, he didn't want her prosecuted.
Right.
He spoke out about not wanting her prosecuted.
Right. But anyway, so she lost her suit. Chris is going to be hosting a National Geographic TV show, Extraordinary Birder, soon. We look forward to it.
I've been looking for the air date. I haven't found it. It's going to be on Nat Geo, the National Geographic channel. If you find the date, or Chris, if you're watching, let us know when it's going to air and we'll inform the audience.
Well, the former Speaker of the Michigan House had an unfortunate date, Lee Chatfield, 34 years old. There he is. He was the Speaker in 2019. He's being investigated for sexually assaulting a student at the Christian school where he taught. Her name is Rebecca Chatfield, now 27. When she was 14 or 15, she is now married to Lee's brother. The school's super is Lee's father, so they're not going after him. Lee says the sex was consensual, but it can't be consensual at that age.
He was 21 at the time, a teacher at the school. It's not like consensual intra-teen sex. He was 21, she was 14 or 15. She was a student, he was a teacher, and she ended up marrying his brother. And
keep up on the age of consent. In Michigan, it is 16, but it's 18 if it's a school setting. So watch out.
It's just a very strange story. And the daughters of a music program founder at a Christian college in Indiana, Grace College. The guy was Don Ogden, who died 7 years ago. His daughters are revealing he sexually abused hundreds of young men. The college bars LGBTQ students and knew about his assaults of young men and covered it up while he taught there for decades. The daughters had sent the college 8 letters when they uncovered this information, none of which were responded to. And this is a Christian college.
Well, and that Lee Chatfield from Michigan, by the way, was a reliable vote against gay rights, as are, of course, the U.S. Catholic bishops. They did a consultation nationwide, around the world, really, they're doing these things, ordered by the Pope, and they found hostility to LGBTQ people is causing a hemorrhaging of young people from the church, as is, of course, the exclusion of women from the priesthood and the history of sexual abuse by the clergy. They also found that the restricting the Latin Mass is driving the conservatives away. So I guess they're going down.
Omnia Gallia in tres partes est divisa.
As my mother would say, you do, and you clean it up.
Well, the report says that there is great division among the Catholic parishioners in the United States, and there's great pain and anxiety over these issues. There is a huge division, as there is in the entire country.
Get over it. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
In Indiana, a Republican county judge, Kelsey Hanlon, issued a preliminary injunction against the state's new ban on abortions, said it is a significant restriction of personal autonomy that offends the liberty guarantees of the Indiana Constitution. On the other hand, Ohio's fetal heartbeat ban was also put on hold pending an October 7th hearing. But, what about Arizona, where, they had a 15-week ban and a judge came in and said, no, let's put the 1864 Confederate ban in.
Pre-statehood. Wasn't that pre-statehood?
Yes, it was. Arizona wasn't a state until 1912.
So how does he justify that a law that was passed more recently has to be thrown out in favor of a law passed before statehood.
He's probably fond of the law that also was passed in 1864 that set the age of consent at 10. 1864. So this is nuts.
People didn't live as long then, Andy. You had to get started earlier.
Oh my God. And I don't usually like mentioning Tucker Carlson about anything, but what he did this past week, sharing the names and photos of Vanderbilt University's Medical Center Board of Directors and saying basically, get them. They provide gender affirming care. Get them. Do something about them. He says neighborhood dads should mete out justice to anyone who even thinks about sexualizing their kids. This is what's whipping up this violence.
It is.
And of course,
and you've already seen that in operation at other hospitals around the country.
And of course, if he were serious about it, he'd go after the number one. His number one target would be Trump, friend of Jeffrey Epstein, who was famous for all that. Yeah.
All right. There's usually a sports story here, and we have one from the NBA. A Minnesota Timberwolf, Anthony Edwards, has been fined $40,000 for using homophobic slurs online. He's apologized for that and promised not to do it again. But, this stuff slips out so easily from people.
$40,000. And back in Virginia, put the picture up of Galen Bauman. He's a gay man. Look, he was in prison for 9 years for a sex offense when he was a teenager. But Virginia wants to keep punishing him for the rest of his life with civil commitment and things like that. He's even part of a program to fight this kind of stuff, and he won. The High Court of Virginia reversed a trial court and dismissed the Commonwealth's petition to keep him locked up. 20 states have these civil commitment laws. Lawyers for the Center for HIV Law and Policy challenged that it had a homophobic bias, they said. And they were joined by GLAAD, Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders, National Center for Lesbian Rights, and other groups. So,
there's no evidence that he's done anything wrong since his release from prison or that he remains any kind of threat.
He didn't check in on a probation thing once, and that's what they were getting him for and trying to lock him up again. I mean, it's just eternal punishment for something he did as a teen. It's just, and so good on him.
Yep. International news?
Well, yeah. I mean, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met this week with the co-founder of Pussy Riot, Russian dissident Nadia Tolokonikara, at a freedom of expression roundtable at State. The press secretary for Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said, Blinken has made his decision about who he's going to be discussing the future of Russia with, and it's Pussy Riot. And Nadia
if only.
Well, Nadia said, it's me and my colleagues who are improving the image of Russia and reassuring Ukraine and the world that they can trust us. She's part of the movement to free Brittany Griner from the horrible conditions in Russia's prisons.
I'm trying to figure out what that gesture of hers with the hand against, couple of fingers against her cheek. Is that any signal to anybody about anything? It just looked a little strange. And she also gave credit to the big pop star who has come out against Putin and the war against Ukraine, and said that she's a real hero and role model for Pussy Riot and other dissidents in Russia.
All right. The Italian elections are extremely alarming. They've elected the neo-fascist Giorgia Meloni, and she will likely be the prime minister. That's not 100% sure, but her party got the most votes. The Brothers of Italy, which is a descendant of Mussolini. It's the most since the war. She is the first female. In her memoir, she brags about going into bookstores and stamping left-wing books, fake, do not buy. Her party's members of parliament bought out circulation of all those books. I don't know, that's that system. She's very anti-LGBTQ. They're trying to say, oh, she's not going to be so bad. She is for us.
Yeah, they're trying to reassure us that, she doesn't really want to get rid of the euro. She has to stick with that. And she's not going to be able to do all the things that she claims she's going to do because she's under some kind of control by the European Union. But it's not a good sign. She loves Viktor Orban. She used
to love Putin, yeah, but you know,
she has said she's against the war in Ukraine, but nobody really believes her. We'll see how this develops, but this is the only hope we have is, as I've said before, Italy tends to change governments every 6 minutes, so she could disappear fast.
The wonders never cease. The Catholic bishops in Belgium, in mostly Flanders, I think, including Cardinal Joseph de Kessel, pictured there, are defying the Vatican and introducing blessing ceremonies for same-sex couples in their dioceses, creating a liturgy for the celebrations. In 2021, the Vatican issued an official clarification. You can't do this. You have no power to do this. They say, the Belgian bishops say they want to be a welcoming church that excludes no one. But the evil and idiot official teaching of the Roman Catholic Church is that we're disordered and we're called to chastity and through self-mastery and disinterested friendship approach Christian perfection. Phooey. Tell it to the 80% of the Curia in the Vatican who are actively homosexual. Okay.
And of course, a close cousin is the Anglican Church in the UK, which decided not to allow Desmond Tutu's daughter, who is a married lesbian, to preside at her godfather's funeral.
Now, that's a picture of her with her wife. Where are we?
He had the guy who died had requested that she preside at his funeral, and the church denied her the ability to do that because she is a married lesbian. So they moved the service to an outdoor backyard of someone's house and conducted it there. But how dare the church?
Well,
say,
when she got married, and in 2015, it's Marceline Tutu van Forth as her wife. She was banned in South Africa from functioning as a priest
by the Anglican Church.
Yes. So just do it.
Yeah.
As she did.
All right. Better, a tiny bit better news from Qatar. Where the World Cup, the international soccer tournament, will be held in November, I think. There have been protests about it being assigned there because they are so anti-LGBTQ, and there are LGBTQ soccer fans who intend to go to the tournament. This last week, a very brave gay German soccer fan confronted the Qatar ambassador to Germany at a conference, stood up and spoke directly to him and said, how dare you keep these murderous laws and act the way you do? Well, after that, Qatar announced that the anti-LGBTQ laws would be suspended for the duration of the World Cup. People can hold hands in public.
Like, if you watch the Holocaust series, of course, we knew this. Hitler did that during the Olympics in Berlin. They took down a lot of the anti-Jewish signs. All right.
Well, a lot of the players and coaches are planning to wear little rainbow hearts on their uniforms as they protest during the cup.
Okay. All right. Sad news out of England from Dustin Lance Black, who's married to Tom Daly there, the diver. Dustin has opened up about sustaining a serious head injury last month, and he says he needs to rest his brain and that the road back will be long. They were last seen together at Wimbledon in July. Tom took him on a vacation to the Greek Isles so that he could space out. The documentary on Dustin, Mama's Boy, is opening up the New Fest Festival October 13th and will then be on HBO shortly thereafterwards. And his film about Bayard Rustin, directed by David Wolf, is due next year. But really, he can't use his brain right now. I mean, in terms of doing this kind of work until he gets better.
Yeah, there haven't been any details released about how the injury occurred, but it is evidently quite serious. All right. And in AIDS and health news, monkeypox still in the news. There is the latest chart from New York City of monkeypox cases shows a sharp drop.
It's a precipitous drop.
Although one wonders how much testing they're doing. But
nationally, they've recorded 25,000 cases, but the daily average has gone from 500 in early August to 208 now. So, it is going down. No time to exhale. Keep up the good work. People are getting vaccinated, modifying behavior.
And Mondaire Jones, congressman, who is now losing his seat for redistricting and losing a big election, did a great PSA about getting vaccinated for monkeypox.
Hey everyone, it's Congressman Mondaire Jones here, and I just got my second dose of the monkeypox vaccine at Westchester Medical Center's drive-through clinic in Valhalla. Getting vaccinated is a safe and effective way to stop the spread of monkeypox. We know that monkeypox impacts all of us, but in particular, communities of color have faced barriers to necessary medical care because of stigma and other systemic inequities. It's why I'm so excited to be doing my part in preventing the spread, and I encourage you to do the same. Go to health.newyork.gov and click on monkeypox and find out where you can go get vaccinated.
By the way, the Broadway Cares flea market was this weekend. They raised a record $1 million with all those Broadway people. There's no people like show people. And last week, GMHC honored their co-founder, Larry Mass, and I was honored to present him with his award for activism.
Nice. All right. Entertainment news.
Okay. Well, I did want to mention that there was a settlement on behalf of HIV-positive ROTC cadet Eddie Diaz. He's going to get to go into the military. They don't usually let you in if you already have it. His case, he won, but we have to get rid of it for everybody. It's already been gotten rid of for people who are active duty, who are already in.
All right. We have only a few minutes left. So let's first take a look at Madame Tussauds version of Lil Nas X in the gold suit from the Met Gala. That's the real Lil Nas X embracing him. He's very happy with the representation. And he also was doing a concert in Boston, and there were protesters outside. So he sent pizza to all the protesters outside.
Right.
Nice.
Gay actor Jonathan Bailey, the star of Bridgerton, and who won the Olivier for Company in London, which I saw, will star as the male lead Figaro in the movie being made of Wicked with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, directed by John Chu, who did In the Heights.
Bad news from the new version of The Amazing Race on CBS. In the first episode, the extremely charming lesbian couple were axed. They're the first couple off. Shep and I had really been looking forward to following them, but they're gone. We don't like that. And on Dancing with the Stars, Shangela and Sam Champion are still alive. They're doing very well. But Teresa Giudice of The Real Housewives of New Jersey is gone on the second episode. She had 2 left feet.
Back to England, out actor-director Daniel Evans, who I saw play Peter Pan once, has been named co-artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company with Tamara Harvey there, who's the first woman in the post. They succeed out-gay Gregory Duran, the husband of the late Anthony Sher, who had a terrific run since 2012.
Hannah Gadsby has a new deal with Netflix for a new solo special. She's an absolutely wonderful performance artist. And she's also going to produce a special with a lot of other differently abled performers, because she wants to show the world that there are others and give people a boost up.
And she's a lesbian.
Yes, she is. And I love her, Nanette, Douglas, and then there was a third one whose name I can't remember, but I've seen them all, and they all were terrific. Some of them are online, so look up Hannah Gadsby. She talks not only about being a lesbian, but about having autism, and she's very clever and endearing. There's an interesting exhibit opening in Chicago this weekend at the Wrightwood 659 Gallery. It's called The First Homosexuals, Global Depictions of a New Identity, 1869 to 1930. This is one of the works from the exhibit. There are going to be 100 plus paintings, drawings, prints, photos, film clips from around the world. This is organized by Jonathan D. Katz, who has done a number of groundbreaking exhibits of LGBTQ-related art over the years, including one at the Smithsonian a few years ago. And this is the precursor to an even bigger exhibit that will show up in 2025 that will travel around the world. But this one is just going to be at the Wrightwood 659 Gallery in Chicago from October 1st through December 17th. Highly recommend you take a look at that.
Yes, folks, we didn't invent homosexuality in 1969.
We certainly did
but
not.
Hallmark Channel is finally premiering their first holiday rom-com centered on a gay couple, The Holiday Sitter, starring Jonathan Bennett, a Mean Girls alum, playing a workaholic bachelor babysitting his niece and nephew, falling for his neighbor, played by George Crissa. Bennett also executive produced.
Now, this is not the first Hallmark Christmas movie with gay characters, but, I always feel when they make these announcements, it's like, the first movie where people wear a red and a green sock on Thursday.
All right, this is Gay USA, and that's what we focus on.
I know. I'm not criticizing that they're doing it or whatever, but the way they try to sell it as, well, it's the first one with them said. What about the Kristen Stewart one? That was pretty centered.
You have anything timely? I also have some more history if you
go right ahead.
Well, in the midst of the right wingers squealing over Disney having a black actress, Halle Bailey as Ariel, a fictional character in the first place, comes the story that Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Little Mermaid as a love letter to Edvard Cullen, telling him, "I long for you as though you were a beautiful Calabrian girl." The story symbolized his inability in 1836 to have Colin, just as the mermaid cannot be with a human.
I love Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. They're much more interesting to me than the Grimm brothers fairy tales. They're all, the Little Match Girl, the Snow Queen, the Little Mermaid. They're all much more dark and interesting than the Grimm brothers stories. So
the point is, we've always existed and we always will, no matter what they try to do us. I love what's going on in Iran. I feel for those people over there standing up, and gay people are involved in those demonstrations. Obviously, it's mostly about women trying not to have to wear the hijab and be subjugated, but it's inspiring.
And I love the dissidents in Russia, but we are down to our last couple of seconds, so we will say goodbye and see you next week.
Bye-bye.